All right, what is this article you've been wanting me to read, Matt? According to new study, gas planets may start off as flattened disks before becoming spherical. Okay, this doesn't prove anything about your theories about how I don't even get how this whole disk planet thing is supposed to work.
Like, just see the disk. Then, which we don't realize is that a tortoise comes by and attaches to that disk, which then flies through the galaxies. You know.
Okay, well that's actually more believable than the weird equations you've been sending me. I just saw this article the other day that kind of cracked me up because it's really not that interesting in the grand scheme of planet stuff, but it's only making headlines because it's talking about planets being flat during the formation period.
Right.
Which is kind of funny.
Well, I mean, you look at Saturn, right? It has Saturn's rings, and those are it's a disk, right?
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I guess Jupiter-like planets could start off as
but ironically,
frisbees.
They're all round. Like the actual planet itself is still round, though, even though the disk is. Yeah. Okay. Never mind.
Yeah. Oh man. Stay with us, flat earthers. Okay. You keep life interesting. You know, just when you're thinking, who could possibly think they're out there with doing their little experiments. I like the experiment videos. You ever watch those?
Yeah, there was one where they literally just like proved that the Earth was flat, or they proved that it was round, and then they had to be like, wait, that's weird, that shouldn't work, and then the backtracking.
Those are the greatest ones when they actually have fairly solid science behind it, where they're like, here's the equation, here's the premise, and this will finally prove it. And then they're like, we must have done something wrong.
Wait a second. Yeah, there was one where they're like lifting up lights or something like that. And it would shine through a hole, and they're like, okay, if we don't see it, that means it's round. And they didn't see it. Yeah. And then they lifted it up, and then they saw it.
You must have done something to the plate. You must have messed up the plates. That's what it was. Yeah. I don't want them to convert them, to be honest. I think they're fine in their sort of...
You think it adds to society?
You know, I mean, like, do we want them back in the fold of normal people, right? Just stay in your weird fringe groups. And I want to make a space video game that's flat planets, you know, and just cater to that niche.
There you go. Yeah. God, can you imagine if the world was actually flat? Like, how cool that would be? Ignore all the physics and everything like that.
How would that be any cooler than what it is right now?
Because there would be like a giant disc around the side of the planet that's just like a giant like ice disc thing, mountain range to keep everything in.
Oh, okay.
So cool.
To keep the oceans from falling over the edge.
Yeah.
Because that's
Is there anything on the other side of the disc?
I don't know. Yeah, that's it. Like, what's on the other side?
Yeah, can you like drill down to the other side?
I don't. Yeah, how come nobody's climbed over the mountain range? And like, it just seems like the most easily provable thing ever. You know?
God, that'd be so terrifying to be at the top of the mountain, look down. Can you imagine the vertigo? Just seeing space, like just space.
It'd be like Halo when you get to the edge of the Halo, right?
Damn.
Yeah.
So we need to make a Halo, not like a weapon, but just, can you imagine just seeing this giant disc out in the distance and it'd
be cool.
That'd be so cool.
That's how like a lot of sort of sci-fi concept for spaceships are, where they have like the big tubes that rotate around, and then people can look up and you see like somebody else's house on top of the thing. You're like,
that'd be so awesome. Cool. I can't believe how expensive that would be, but sign me up.
I can't believe they haven't tried a centrifugal force space station yet. Like, you would think that would be a module they would have added onto the ISS or something.
I'm sure it's going to happen at some point.
I read maybe a month or two ago that there is a private company planning to do a artificial gravity space station test. So that's cool. I wonder if it would mess with your kind of like your inner ear stuff, because you are.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's different than normal gravitational force, right? It's centrifugal force. So your feet are kind of moving faster than your head, and depending on the size of it, maybe it affects how weird it feels. I don't know. But yeah, it's a good reason to test it.
The bigger it is, probably the better.
Yeah. Well, for a test, they could make it fairly inexpensive, because all you need is basically one chamber with a weight on the other end, right? And then you can make like a cord or a truss as long as you need it to be, right? You don't have to build a whole wheel space station.
Right.
You just spin. Like
just start get up guy up there and just start spinning, baby.
For anyone dropping in now, this is what the podcast is about. It's two guys that know nothing about space, science, space.
We play
dynamics.
video games and then give our thoughts on things that we probably should give our thoughts on.
Yeah, we were supposed to talk about video games here. Welcome to the podcast. This is the Level With Me podcast. I think I've been skipping the intro lately because we just get into it, but we are a weekly podcast. We go out on Wednesdays. You can listen to us here on YouTube, subscribe to the playlist, or you can find us on Spotify, iTunes, all the other podcast locations. And you can also listen to the live recordings on Mondays, interact with us in chat, ask us questions, correct our stupid errors that we make along the way. And you can do that by signing up for our Patreon, which helps us out greatly. All the links for that are in the video description.
Smooth.
Thank you, sir. So, man, last week I wanted to talk about people can hop onto our Discord, which is also linked in the video description, and give us suggestions for what you'd like us to talk about. And Hunter Coys wanted us to talk about some of the new handhelds coming onto the market. And it is actually an interesting topic because I have a Steam Deck. I like the Steam Deck. But my main issues with the Steam Deck are that I can only play Steam games on the Steam Deck, which in fairness is the vast majority of PC games. But
I would say it's almost all of them, but yeah.
Almost all of them. But it does annoy me when, say, Diablo 4 came out, and I'm like, man, this would be great to play on the Steam Deck. You can't unless you do some weird... You can kind of make it work, but it's not... native. It's not, or it doesn't run that well, and Steam is running on Proton, so you can install Windows.
Couldn't you buy Diablo on Steam, or am I completely losing it? You probably couldn't. Never mind.
Yeah, you could look it up. I'm pretty sure no, because I would have.
Because I know that Blizzard does have like some game. Yeah, you can buy Diablo 4 on Steam.
What? Shut up.
It's right there. Mixed reviews. Though, when did Diablo 4, because it says October 17th. Is that when it released? Probably. Sounds right.
Okay, wait. I just purchased Diablo 4 on my Steam Deck via Steam. I wanted to reach, I think I'm see any settings to adjust they found to enhance the game experience. Okay. Maybe, did it come out later on Steam? I don't know.
It may have. I don't know.
Anyway, I remember trying to get it working on Steam at one point. It was a huge pain in the butt. Or on the Steam Deck, rather.
Yeah.
But you can install Windows on a Steam Deck natively, which is neat. But now there's other competitors out there. So our commenter asked about the Lenovo Legion, which is like a little handheld. It looks just like a Steam Deck meets a Switch, Steam Deck, basically. I think a lot of these are going to come out on the market. I personally love the idea of seeing more of this. I do like the idea of the Steam Deck taking off, but I'm becoming less and less a fan of Steam's 30% aggressive monetization on games. So if you have a product that's not tied into using Steam OS or Steam, then there's a chance you could buy a game on there without the 30% cut by running Windows on it natively or something. Not that there's a lot of games out there that don't sell on Steam, but it's one of those things that I think eventually will have to be dealt with, is that crazy 30% cut of all this stuff. Because imagine if Microsoft took a 30% cut of every piece of software that sold for Windows.
What do they take? 10, 15?
Microsoft doesn't take, unless you buy it through the Microsoft Store, they don't take a cut of software sales for Windows.
What does Apple take?
So, again, they don't take a cut unless you buy it through their app store,
which is basically the only way you can buy anything on an iPad or like from their Apple products. Well,
okay, but not from a MacBook, right? Not from. Okay. So yeah, you can get a piece of software on the MacBook and install it with whatever. Download it from the website and install it in Apple. doesn't take a cut of that.
I mean,
sale.
they're literally going to court with like Epic and stuff like that because they have a quote unquote monopoly according to Epic because their app store, you have to get it off of their app store to be able to buy anything.
Yeah. I think we talked about this last week or the week before that Europe was cracking down on Apple already. So I think they just made it so that they have to let you sideload apps now on Apple products, which is like a first.
Feels
eventually that'll come to the States. It always comes later, usually. But we like our monopolies over here. You know?
We do. We really, yeah. Corporations, let's go.
I am wondering though, how much longer these like sort of like Steam provides a good service and it's just not 30%. It's like a flat 30% fee for everyone. And you're like, okay, well, that's worth it for some devs that might need all these extra services and additional stuff. Usually not 30% though. It's a huge percentage of any game. So I'm just wondering for when that comes to a head. But I do like the idea of all these mobile game platforms popping up. I like the idea of Steam Deck making it. I just wish Steam and SteamOS wasn't so aggressive with the monetization. So it makes me almost want to support the alternative options a little bit more than the Steam Deck. So if those start kicking off, that's going to be great. You know, hardware's getting faster and smaller.
Well, yeah, I mean, I do agree. I don't really know much about handhelds because I haven't looked into them at all, and I don't own one myself. But it would be nice if there was an alternative that was just as good as the Steam Deck and didn't have those restrictions. I mean, that sounds like the better option. I mean, you're not buying the name brand, the one that everyone wants, that all consumers want. But if it's better, who cares?
Yeah, for sure. I tend to agree. My only issue with, say, the Steam Deck right now, and like one area where I think something like the Switch beats it, is that the Switch it's not very powerful, but because it's not as powerful, it doesn't get super hot. The battery lasts longer.
Yeah.
It's not like there was a big fan issue with the Steam Deck when it came out. People were like trying to replace the fans and use different bearings and stuff because it would just be like, woo, and you're like, you're playing the game. You're like, I couldn't hear what the character was saying because it sounds like there's a leaf blower going. Yeah,
sounds like a jet engine's about to go off.
Yeah. So that is one issue with them, and I think that's just a byproduct of them trying to cram as much power into these things as possible because they don't have the same control as the Nintendo, where Nintendo could just be like, hey, make it work on our really low power platform. And these guys are like, oh, we need to make it as powerful as possible so it can play as many games as possible. Otherwise, it's going to get slammed with reviews being like, it's not that powerful. I can't play my favorite game at 60 FPS or whatever.
Right.
So they're kind of fighting a different battle on that front. Speaking of Nintendo, I watched. It's not a super new movie. I think it came out last year, but the Tetris movie. Have you seen that?
No, I did not.
It's pretty good.
Was it good?
Yeah. It kind of threw me for a loop. I didn't expect it. I thought it was going to be more about the actual creation of Tetris.
Okay.
Thinking about it and then it becoming well known around the world. But the story sort of picks up around them trying to bring Tetris to the Western markets and get it on arcade machines and the Nintendo and all the other platforms. And the story goes around trying to get it out of the Soviet Union because
it started there.
Yeah, it was developed by a Russian developer. And
really, I did not know that.
Yeah, and because he was working at nobody owned anything over there, right? No individuals owned their rights to anything they made. So the state literally owned Tetris, and it's like
fascinating.
And it's like Nintendo and these other companies trying to license Tetris from basically the crumbling Soviet Union that's ultra corrupt, and like all these like secret police guys are trying to like extort them and like.
So was it like a drama? Was it a comedy? What?
I think they might have. I should have looked this up before the podcast, but I'm sure they embellished some of the details. It is based on the true stories, but they have like a chase scene in there where they're being chased by the secret police around Russia, and you're like, that I don't know if that happened or not, but
right.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it gives you it ends up being a little bit more about communism to a degree, and sort of the absolute sacrifice of all your rights and freedoms as an individual. So the dude who created Tetris like doesn't belong to him, and then they're trying to sell it to a company, but it's super corrupt, and the government's trying to get like a take on the sale and all this, and so they're going to sell the rights to this other weird company that's not Nintendo, just because the guy knows like the people in charge and is like cutting them in on the deal, basically.
I've heard good things about it.
I liked it. I thought it was good. It's definitely trying to make it watchable for somebody who's not as into video games.
Right.
You know,
they got to embellish some things. It's like when you remember. Did you ever watch Hacksaw Ridge?
Yeah.
I really liked it. I thought it was a great movie. I liked it a lot, but I was because it's based off of the true story, and everything.
Yeah.
But they also embellish some things, like you mentioned. And I remember having a bit of an argument with someone and was like, what do you mean? It's all 100%. It's like, well, yeah, I think a lot of that stuff happened, except for when he does like a bicycle kick a grenade, like midair. I'm like, come on, bro. Like there's no
10 accounts of that happening. They're like, and then that time
he bicycle kicks a grenade out of the air. I'm like, come on. Like, yeah, it was cool, I guess, but that didn't happen. Let's be real. He may have kicked a grenade.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, oh, what if we just turn that into a bicycle kick?
Slight embellishment, yeah. Great movie, by the way. Would recommend.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of war films, did you watch the latest Master?
I did.
Are we calling it the wrong thing? Masters of the Air. I think I called it Masters of Flight last podcast, and there was like 10 comments in the thing that was like, it's Idiot. Masters of the Air.
Idiot. Yeah, no, I'm still digging it. It's really good.
Oh, chat I'm wondering kind of where did kick a grenade on the ground. That's the true part.
Okay, yeah, but I don't think he bicycle kicked.
Yeah.
If I remember, maybe my memory is not as good for the movie, but yeah, it was ridiculous. Anyways, yeah, Masters of the Air is fantastic. I'm just wondering like where it's heading, because it's just like, man, people are just dying all the time.
Yeah, you're like, is every episode all the cast dying?
Yeah, pretty much, because that's basically what happened during the war.
Yeah. No, I mean the survival rates on these guys. So the trailer for the show before it launched, I believe, showed some of the Red Tails guys. So I imagine some of the narrative will focus on the Mustang pilots that start flying escort with them to a degree. Because I believe, and again, I'm a terrible historian, as chat has pointed out several times, but I believe the Mustangs had much longer range. They were great fighters in general, but they could also fly much further, and it allowed them to escort the B-17s.
To actually help and just not let them be sitting ducks. Like that's so, they're like, oh, hey, thanks boys for escorting us. Now when the battle really begins, you're not here. I'm like, what is that? Just seems logistically not good, but
yeah, no, it sucks. So like one of the episodes, you see their escorts turn around and you're like, well, I mean, thanks, guys. You protect. I mean, they probably did protect them through the channel.
They were a deterrent,
but they developed better fighters, longer range fighters, and so I think those guys were able to go with them way further into a lot of those missions. And I imagine the show is going to focus on them to some degree as it goes on. But obviously, these guys that are bailing out of these missions over in the middle of German-occupied Europe are then on the ground, and they're having to make some crazy decisions of like, do I turn myself over? Do I try and escape? They have all these crazy decisions to deal with. And so you have those narrative going on in the background as well. And it's so well done. And every episode is like, I find it hard to watch because you're like, this is true. Like none of this doesn't feel embellished.
Right.
Like it's horrifying.
I feel a constant sense of just like sadness where I'm just like, I can't believe people went through this.
Yeah.
This is what they had to do. God, can you imagine the PTSD? No shot.
No, I mean, nobody can. And they have that little allude to it in the show where one of the shrinks comes in talking about, the guys needing breaks and stuff from the missions, and the guy in charge like, Yeah, breaks time. Man has been fighting since the days of caveman, since we could pick up rocks and throw them at each other, you know.
Like, this is so different.
Yeah, and the guy is just sort of like, yeah, but we've never had warfare like this before. Right. You don't understand. This is
God.
Yeah. Crazy, crazy stuff, man. I mean, they're going to keep making books and movies about this specific aspect of this war forever, because it is probably one of the craziest things that's happened. And it's nuts too, because even on some of the missions where like almost nobody comes back from the mission, they're like, well, they did hit the target, and so on paper that was kind of a success for the military,
for the overall war effort,
right? Yeah, they do the math. They're like, well, yeah, we lost a couple hundred guys, but you know what? That factory is out of commission, so the Germans are going to have to delay their push into wherever. Yeah, it's such a good show. Honestly, just reason enough to up your Apple TV subscription for a little bit. But look at me promoting an Apple product. Ugh, I mean, I feel dirty.
It really is probably their best product. At least I don't consume any other Apple products, but it's the one that I have, and like so many good shows on that platform. Yeah. I don't think I've watched a show there. Well, no, I take it back. I did. There was that alien dumb invasion show I wasn't really keen on. Apparently it gets better, but besides that one, it's been great content.
Yeah. Shall we actually talk about video games for a second?
Video games on this channel?
Yeah.
I would.
Did you?
If you'd be so inclined.
I know you've been enjoying Helldivers too.
Yep.
Did you notice that it topped Grand Theft Auto 5's concurrent player count on Steam?
I did see that. I think it got over like 400,000 on Steam.
Yeah. Do you think Sony's going to start launching some more PCs alongside the same release date as their big titles now?
Oh, you mean to say that there's a huge market of PC players out there that they just haven't tapped into for whatever reason because they're Sony? Yeah. No way.
I like how Sony's just getting on board and they're like, where's all this money coming from? The guys who can afford high-end PCs, you idiots! Like, come on,
right? I mean, I guess I know you want them on your ecosystem, but at the same time, people that play on PC want to play on PC. They're only going to go over to console if they have to.
Yeah,
and especially for a game like
this, so good that you are gonna get a console to play it. Right. Otherwise, you're playing on PC.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're gonna just buy the game on PC, or they're just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think hopefully this will be a wake-up call. I don't mind if Microsoft and Sony do this thing. Well, Microsoft, which we could get to later, is now going to be bringing apparently some over to Sony. But I'm okay if they just kind of, they have their walled gardens, but maybe kind of deviate a little bit to PC side every once in a while, like they've been doing with Microsoft for a couple of years.
Yeah. It's encouraging, man. How's the game holding up?
Well, except for servers, unfortunately. The servers have been struggling.
They keep hitting max concurrent player counts, and they're like, turn on more servers, guys. Like,
which is not apparently very easy to do. So they're struggling. I think they got up to I think they had 450,000 was their cap, and that was between PC and PlayStation together, and they were just hitting it. And this was, I think, early this weekend. I don't know if they've improved that, but yeah, the game's killing it.
It's not the worst problem to have.
It is if you're a player because you want to play.
Yeah, as a developer, you're like, oh, we're too successful. The game's
we're suffering from
unstable.
Success. Yeah, that's been the theme.
Yeah, it's cool though, man. I like seeing these. It's not even that Helldivers 2 is necessarily super innovative. It's just really good at what it does.
Right. They made a game that does something really, really well, and that gameplay loop is just satisfying. Where you find a lot of these other games don't do things very well. They maybe do a bunch of stuff only okay or decent, and it's like, oh, well, it's almost like people like to play a game that's well made, to do one thing and one thing only.
I think it also points out just how effective a really finely tuned gameplay loop, satisfying visuals, satisfying audio, satisfying artwork and animations just contributes to, like, hey, guess what? It's kind of, you've played this game before in some way or another. but this looks amazing. It plays amazing. It's been tested. We didn't try and overblow with all these crazy concepts. We just made it really well. Swifty mentioned that there's a patch tomorrow. So if you're listening to the podcast on Wednesday, which is, 99.9999% of you, then maybe it's better. So the patch is supposed to address some of the server stuff.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
I'm happy for them. I mean, it does suck for players that, bought the game and now aren't able to play because they don't want to, they don't even have a queue. It's just first come, first serve. So if you load up the game and it's like, oh, you didn't get in, now you have to just kind of wait. And hope that the next time you reconnect, so that kind of sucks. But all in all, I love to hear success stories like this of a small little company. I don't think there's like tiny company, but they're definitely, this game was not hyped up to the point where you would have assumed that it would have been at this place. So it's great to see the success.
It definitely, I saw some articles where the devs were like, we were not anticipating this level of success at all. Like we were expecting it to sell and people to enjoy it because they've already made a game before. So they were probably expecting it to be somewhere within the realm of the original Helldivers. And then it just exploded. Yeah. But
I think Helldivers, the original Helldivers, its max concurrent was 6,600 on Steam.
I mean, they got to be so happy with the success of it. But what's funny about that is, like you say, they didn't even have a queue set up. Is why would you at that scale, right? You're like, yeah, we're gonna hit a nice peak at launch, and then
this isn't Diablo or
So they did, why design a queuing system? Because that's just more dev time for something that's literally never gonna get used. So why would we have that? And now they're like, we don't have a queuing system, and there's 450 concurrent, and it's growing. It
just keeps getting bigger and bigger
because the people who want to play can't play it, I guess, and they're log on the next day and they're like, can I play it now?
Yeah.
Oh man, it's so crazy, dude.
Can't wait to see what they do with it too. And I like the way they've been handling it in terms of like, we need to earn the right to monetize. It's like, oh damn, refreshing. Okay, yeah, you gotta show us why it should be monetized further. And just everything about it, just they seem like they get it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because they're just smaller devs that hit it off big, and so they have that smaller dev, let's make a good game for the players mentality, as opposed to big studio that's like, we're gonna make
we need
an
to make
amazing game and you're gonna play it, damn it.
We need to make as much money as possible. Not a lot of money, all of the money. Speaking of, transitioning very nicely into Skull and Bones.
Ooh, baby, how you enjoying your quadruple A game over there, Matt?
Oh, it was it's so many A's. So many A's.
It might even be a quintuple.
Yeah, it might be.
Yeah, something.
The game finally came out. Now, full disclosure, I did a sponsored stream for it. So, just for transparency, I did a sponsored stream for it. I enjoyed what was there, and I watched Skilled Up's video of it, and I thought he made a really good point where if you didn't know that this game was in development for like a decade, if you didn't know that this game, passed between like 50,000 different developers, and you just assumed that it just came out of nowhere and wasn't related to Black Flag at all, like a beloved game, you would think that it was fine. And it is. It's an okay, fine game that does kind of a sandbox. You play as a ship. You are a ship. You're not a character. You are a boat. And you go around trying to get better boats and better upgrades for your boat. And that's the game.
Yeah. Now, would you think it was fine with the $70 price tag?
That's where it kind of gets a little,
Yeah. Or would you,
it's a bit of a steep price. Yeah.
What do you think is a fair price for this game, having played it now?
Oh, I don't think I could answer.
Why not?
Because I don't know. I don't.
Oh, because you're so detached from normal monetary problems with your massive influencer success. You're like, well, how much does a carton of milk cost?
How's milk? What is that? $10 these days? Yeah. No, that's
$100 for milk, right?
I don't know. Like I'd say 40, 50. It's going to depend on from person to person, though.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, obviously, I'm not asking you what is the definitive correct price. I'm asking you what you think is a fair price.
All right, fair enough. I'm not sure. But I would say around that, yeah, $40 to $50 would have felt more reasonable for what the game has to offer. There's a story, and the story is fine, but the big issue with it is that there's two main characters that you interact with. One of them is who we're going to talk about is I think his name is John Skurlock, and he's an okay character. But he just monologues to you because you're a mute. You don't say a word the entire time. There'll be like a dialogue thing that will come up every once in a while, and he can react to that. I don't know if it changes the way he, does it change the dialogue later on? I have no idea. Probably slightly. But the problem is that he keeps complaining about how he's being betrayed by his other captains, or there's this menace out there that's trying to steal all of his loot and stuff and making things difficult. But you never interact with those other people ever. There's never dialogue with them. You never see who they are. Every once in a while you'll see their ship and their name is above it, and you'll take them out and be like, "Hey, great job." So there's just like this really big disconnect with everything. That's
so weird, because almost every other game, even like an indie game, they'll have like maybe a little quip line or something like that pop up when you run into the bad guy you're supposed to hunt down, or or you'll initiate a conversation, a dialogue with them before the combat. But that doesn't happen in this?
Not really. Not that I can remember. It's all
very weird.
It's all very disconnected, where, I mean, I guess in real life, that's kind of how it would be, because you would just be going off and you'd only hear the stories of what these people did.
You don't monologue with the enemy before you fight them IRL. You just try and shoot the guy or whatever.
Right. So I guess you could make the argument that, but it, like, as a game and as a story, it just feels very disconnected, where you're just going from mission to mission, and it's just an excuse to go out and be a pirate for the most part. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a bit of a weak spot. Also, the camera doesn't really move a whole lot, so it's literally it's like the Bethesda effect, where the camera's just kind of staring at the guy, and he just sort of talks to you. There's no dynamic.
Am I the only one that just misses games where it doesn't lock your camera anywhere? You're just there and they speak, and if you want to look at them, you can, and if you want to look at the bookshelves or whatever the heck, you can do that too.
I like that too, but I would prefer some cinematography. I mean, that would be nice. Just also mute characters can work. They can, but man, I find it so much more immersive when your character actually talks to someone. And it's not just them trying to write around the fact that the other person is just going to sit there and listen.
Well, also for a quadruple A game, you can afford some goddamn voice acting for your main character. Yeah. In fact, you can afford to have it be a male or a female character and have two people do the lines.
Yeah.
A la Cyberpunk or whatever.
You could.
Yeah.
You'd think so.
Yeah, I don't know where that fourth A went, really. It's somewhere. You'll find it in the depths of the ocean, is that fourth A lurking.
I will say that the gameplay loop can be kind of fun, because it does remind me of more of a survival game, weirdly enough, where you're trying to go out and gather resources, and then you use those resources to then make bigger ships and more powerful ships. And I
like that concept. I think you can integrate survival to any genre.
You can. Really. You kind of can. And when you're using, like, you get torpedoes, because,
What?
Yeah, you get torpedoes. Don't worry about it. It's cool. So
strap dynamite to a dolphin? What is it?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. They actually like fall off the side of your ship, and then they just go. But it makes it really satisfying because it takes some skill, and you kind of have to line it up and engage their speed based off your speed and the distance. And once you get like all three to land and hit, and you see the huge explosion, and then it does like splash damage to the other ones that are also nearby, like it feels good. Like there is some enjoyment there. You got like mortar fire, which also has
the gameplay wasn't fun enough, and they're like, crap,
absolutely, 100%.
we need torpedoes, man. They're like, they didn't have torpedoes. They're like, torpedoes.
No, 100%.
Yeah,
they needed to add in like these fantasy or more fantastical weapons, because if it was just
how cool would it be if it was like a manatee trained to swim towards the other ship
and then blow itself up? Jesus!
You just light the thing. Swim yonder.
You have this guy. Just go, little manatee. Be free. That's terrible.
That's how I would have done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the technology's sake, I mean, like, they didn't have torpedo tech. You need a dolphin or a manatee. Something.
So the gameplay at times was very satisfying. I like the gameplay, and I think that's why I definitely put like 15 hours or more. Well, no, I played 3 days. So, yeah, I think about 18 hours. So I had fun. I didn't complete the main story.
Yeah.
I got close, I think.
Are you done with it, or are you going to play more?
Probably, I think I might be done with it for now, yeah.
Okay.
I might go back to it off like stream and maybe see like what the end game is like, because they do have like an end game loop where I haven't experienced it myself, but you basically set up little stations around the map where you have to like defend and attack and like upgrade them, and you pretty much just try to build your pirate empire, which sounds interesting, but you would really need to enjoy that gameplay loop to continue on. But if you do, and I have friends that just really enjoy it, they're liking the game.
Okay. Yeah, it's annoying when the news of a game's failures and development hell precedes it to potentially impact the perception, though I don't think they could have escaped the price tag that they threw on the game, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's an okay game. It's fine at what it does, but I think the biggest thing that held it back is that I'm getting the sense that Ubisoft is like, we need to make all of our game needs to be live service. We need to make something that will have a coattail that will continue to make and generate money long term. Where in reality,
that's NFTs, baby.
Where in the long run, or even in the short term, they're probably going to make less money because they tried to really just shoehorn this into what could have been an incredible. Like if they made a Black Flag that wasn't exactly like Black Flag, but had a great story with interesting characters and wasn't around the fact that it needed to be multiplayer and they needed to make it into a live service, I can only imagine it probably would have been a better game overall and potentially sold more because of that. I mean, I can't predict the future.
Do you
or
think
what
that would have fallen into the
like.
typical Ubisoft formula of like kind of an Assassin's Creed game, but just on the sea?
More Black Flag.
Yeah, it just kind of fall into. Do you think it could have suffered in that way if it had fallen? Because it sort of sounds like you're describing a game that's a little bit more in line with the typical Ubisoft open world, whatever they're making.
True.
True. Yeah.
Good point.
One of their Ghost Recon, Assassin's Creed, whatever, and it's like they make these expensive, large-scale, massive games that are just starting to feel more and more vapid, where you're just like, it's the same thing as that other game, and you guys spun a little web for the story, and here's the characters, but it's ultimately like they just feel like copy and paste of the same game formula.
They do. It does get a little copy and paste with Ubisoft. They kind of go in stages where a long time ago, before Assassin's Creed Origins came out, they had this realization where they realized they were just they were making the same game, and they're like, okay, we need to do something different. And so then that's when Origin came out, and people were really happy with it because it was of a deviation from what they were doing before. And then now they're like, oh, we had huge success with that, so let's just keep doing that now. And I think they're reaching the point again where it's like, okay, now we've been doing this for a while. What do we do now?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying I wanted a copy and paste of what they did before, but I think that if there was less attention on just trying, because I'm imagining that's why the game languished in development hell for a decade, is because they're really trying to make that live service work. I could be completely wrong. Who knows?
No, you might be. Because it doesn't seem like that complex of a game in terms of what the actual gameplay loop is.
Yeah.
I do remember reading up on, I think they tried to make it more of what the original concept of is like multiple people on the same boats and all this other stuff. And I think they are running into some real big technical issues with it due to like server sync issues, and apparently like doing things at a certain scale is really, really hard. Like the netcode side of it is super difficult. And I think maybe a couple of years ago, I can't remember if I made a video or if I just retweeted it, but it was one of the delay announcements, and they cited like that they're having trouble with some of the technical sides of getting the multiplayer stuff to sync up properly. And I was like, oh yeah, there's all the games that are trying to do these big multi-vehicle habitational environments where you can interact with other people and things that move through an open world all those devs are delaying and struggling massively because that's like a super tough nut to crack currently. So.
And the funny thing is like, I did play with a friend like once, but for the most part, you would see some people on the high seas, but it was just AI. Like almost the majority of the time, it was like, it didn't need to be multiplayer.
I think they probably scaled all that back because I think they couldn't get it to work at the quality that they wanted, you know? Yeah.
It's gotta be hard.
Yeah. I feel, it's hard because there's a lot of talented devs at Ubisoft that are trying to make a good product, and ultimately they're subjected to whatever their higher ups want to do, so they get labeled as under the Ubisoft flag, which kind of sucks for them, but it is what it is, man. That's corporate game development.
So going back to the whole live service thing, I think it's the same thing with the recent Suicide Squad game, where it's like that game could have maybe been better if it wasn't trying to just be a live service.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to know what the right choice is, but it seems like all the models are trying to integrate live service somehow, and it's just really a scale of how much are they banking on the live service for their revenue stream, and how much are they just saying, yeah, it's an add-on if you want to buy some skins or something, and if you don't want to partake, you don't have to.
We've talked about this before, but there's only so much of a pie. Right? Yep. Like there's only so many players, and there's only so many people that can play these live service games.
There's eventually many great games that are completely free on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like devs are forgetting, or publishers are forgetting that it's like there's only so much of a player base out there. And if you keep making live service games and you want them only playing your game, your pie is going to get the piece of the pie is going to get smaller and smaller for everybody. So good luck trying to carve yours out, because people are already playing their favorite games, and to get them converted, especially for a game that probably shouldn't have been live service to begin with, is going to be a tough sell.
Yep. I don't know where it's going to go down the road, but I think a bunch of publishers are going to lose a lot of money. Probably lost some last year, but a lot more are going to lose more money this year, just because they're launching these big titles into already saturated markets, It's hard to know what the financial model is on some of these games, but I see small studios come out with a game that sort of like has a brief flash and then it evaporates, but then the studio's working on another game after that. So I think they just get investors and stuff. People are like, yeah, they can make a good game. The last one they didn't calculate the interest well enough, but the game itself was competent. So let's have them make another one.
Like Pal World, the developer, they had a statement that was basically, I think there was an article or something that came out that said that Pal World has lost like 80% of its player base, or like 60% of its player base within 2 weeks. And then they came out and said like, hey, thanks for playing our game. We're really happy with all the success that we've gotten. And we're not trying to make a live service. We're just trying to make a fun game.
Yeah.
And we're going to be making more, and we're going to be developing this further on, but it's not going to be within like a week or two. It's going to be months down the road. Yeah. And if you come back, great. If you don't, that's also great. Thank you for experiencing our game. And it's like, yeah, not everything needs to be this game where you keep playing it like it's a job, like it's a lifestyle. You can bounce from game, and they literally said that, bounce from game to game, try out other stuff. And like that's gaming, and that's okay.
I feel like No Man's Sky, even though I don't like that game because it's not really my cup of tea, was a good example of like, even though I had its launch problems and stuff, it's massively improved the experience over the years with quality DLC, but it doesn't seem like it's designed in a way for people to come play it forever and just keep playing it till the next DLC drops, right? It's like, DLC drops, you come in, you build some bases, you explore, you make your spaceships with your friends, and then you kind of burn out on it, and that's fine. And then a DLC will drop later, and that'll bring you back into it. But saying that that's the right way to do things for everyone isn't always fair, and it often works best for the games that are very financially successful in the first place. So they can be like, yeah, let's invest a bunch of money into making DLC, where other games are like,
it was more of the comment of in the mentality that a game needs to be successful long term to have, and the only way that a game is successful is for them to like have a player base that and maintains it long term. But it's like, no, it's a single player game. Like,
do you think that's a mentality that the media and or player base puts out there?
Both.
Where devs never are looking at it that way, where they're like, no, if somebody comes and plays our game for 8 hours and then are done with it, that's fine. Like, we're glad you had fun for 8 hours. Yeah.
Obviously, it differs from game to game. If it's a multiplayer and it's designed around keeping it, then obviously that's going to be a failure if they're leaving. But for especially a single player game, like, who cares? If they're leaving after a week, is like they played it for a week and they had fun, like, mission accomplished. And they also sold. It's not like there's I don't think there was microtransactions, but it's not like there's this long form of monetization that they're banking on, because they already sold the game. And if they had fun and they'll come back for a future update, then great.
Yep. Speaking of these open world copy and paste style games, Respawn is working on a Mandalorian. The same team, I think, that did the Jedi Survivor games is working on a Mandalorian game.
Oh, really?
And it's like more FPS oriented, I think, than
was that revealed?
It was leaked or something.
Oh,
yeah, it might be leaked or something. I'll be honest, the last Jedi Survivor game kind of burned me out on the franchise. I think I'm like, if they announced a new Jedi Survivor game coming out next year, I think I'll pass on it this time.
Really?
I liked the first one a lot, and the second one just kind of felt like the first one, but almost not as good in many ways.
I thought it was actually better than the first, but I also felt like it had a lot of the problems I had with the first one, where I didn't actually feel like a Jedi.
Oh, yeah. I like the characters a lot more in the first one, and in the second one, the story was a little bit like they're trying some weird offshoot stuff with the story, less into it, and I don't know. I wasn't digging the gameplay as much.
That's fair.
Yeah,
the gameplay is the issue that I had. The boss battle is incredible, some of my favorites. But as soon as you had to fight like multiple enemies, I think it completely lost me on the. And I was playing the hardest difficulty, so that was probably my fault. But and I think I've described this before on the podcast. But when I think of a Jedi, I don't think someone who's like running around like a lunatic trying to like just get away from the enemy. I think of someone who's like able to block everything that comes their way, and then weave in attacks at the same time. But because that it just doesn't allow for that, at least at the harder difficulties, you have to constantly be dodging and running away, and it's like, that's not a Jedi, that's a coward. I don't know. It didn't really fulfill that fantasy of what I would think of for. Yeah, you wanted to be a little bit more of like a high skill ninja dude, like jumping around and doing stuff, and they're sort of like swordsmen with magic also. And you're like, okay. Yeah. And I get it, because it's kind of like a Souls game, God of War style. So they want to have that system in place. But when you're getting stun locked by blasters, like,
when a dude with a riot shield is like a challenge, you're like, or not necessarily a challenge, but when it's like two guys with riot shields and you're like, whoa, hang on now we got to think about this. And you're like, you're a Jedi. Like, come on, just cut through their shields, Right.
Like, and maybe it's just because I'm bad at video games. That's distinctly possible.
It is a hard problem to solve, because you want to fight stormtroopers, but stormtroopers aren't really a challenge. So is the whole game going to be like you just cutting through these guys like a hot knife through butter?
Yeah, it is a tough thing to balance for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, so you have to figure out some weird. That's always a weird challenge in video games, right? It's like, how do I make it plausible that I just killed 100 guys on this mission? And also make it seem semi-realistic. It's like, you always have to come up with some sort of gimmick, some sort of weird reason. Okay, you're a Jedi, you killed 100 people. Okay, you're AI enhanced, and you have special slow-mo abilities. Okay, you can do that. Like they have to come up with some reason to do it.
What I think I would have preferred is something where it was more of like, they just get like, you hit incredibly hard. You're a glass cannon, right? Everything's a glass cannon where you hit really hard, but they hit really hard. So you can just like mow through enemies if you're really good. Yeah. But at the same time, like, if you make a mistake, then you get taken out. But I'm not a game developer. That would probably
make it less accessible to a lot of people.
Yeah, probably.
Then you have that problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Mandalorian game, do we know anything about it, or is it just a rumor right now?
Just a rumor. I don't know if it's confirmed. I think it's a fairly reliable rumor, because I've seen it in a few places now. But I I don't know. I'm not that. When I heard the news, I went. I'm hugely respectful of Respawn. I think they've done very competent work with the Jedi Survivor games, but I feel like The Mandalorian is going to be kind of a copy and paste of the Jedi Survivor experience. I just feel that way, right? But with more FPS mechanics, right?
Right.
Or maybe, I don't know.
I wonder if it will be an FPS or if it'll be third person.
Yeah, it did say it was kind of, I read the word FPS in there, so I don't know if that means actually FPS or if it's just more shooter stuff. But
I don't know about you, and this actually can transition very nicely into another topic. But first person, I feel like first person single players in particular, they're hard. It's hard to make them interesting. It's really challenging to make the gameplay loop, fun for extended periods of time. Obviously there's exceptions. You've got your Doom franchise. Doom is incredible. But Immortals of Avium, there was an article.
But you get one of those every 10, 20 years or something.
Right. There was an article by Kotaku. Kotaku that said Immortals of Avium didn't do very well. And this illustrates the downfall or how poorly received single player FPS games are. And a lot of people took that article and that headline and be like, wait a second, I don't think it's an indication that those games are in a rough place. It's more of just that was just kind of a mediocre game.
It's a very weak connection of a premise that in itself is interesting to explore, but Immortals of Avium had many problems beyond just being first person. I mean, I don't hold FPS against it in any way.
Like if Doom Immortal tanked, right, and it was as amazing as it was, be like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. Then yeah, maybe first person.
What about the Far Cry games? Those have all been
those are
massively successful.
Yeah, they're pretty successful.
Yeah, you can do lots of good cutscenes and stuff in first person. Half-Life 2 is one of my favorite single player games, and that was. What I like so much about that is they don't ever cut your camera away from your first person perspective. Like they don't do cutscenes in that, and it just fully immerses you in the world. And they catch your attention by like triggering a little, something falls off a shelf. You look over there and but that takes a lot of time to design.
Takes a lot of time and effort. Yeah. I mean, it's I'm really excited for Stalker 2. That's going to be first person. Can't wait for that. But I feel like there needs to be more than just shooting. Like Call of Duty, as much fun as those campaigns can be, they're really, really basic when you get down to it.
I've stopped playing them, man. They're so boring.
Yeah.
Shoot the guys.
And so you have to do something, interesting to catch people's attention, I think. Because if you I'm going to shoot at some guys, maybe take some damage, duck behind cover, wait for my health to regenerate, and rinse and repeat, that's going to get stale. Yeah. And that's what I feel like a lot will just kind of default to.
Yeah, I think the survival genre does really well first person because it's like, what was that? There's been a bunch of cool little first person indie.
Well, Sons of the Forest.
That's
going to have its 1.0 update. I think it's probably when this launches.
Yeah, right. Then Firewatch was that cool little indie game that was more narrative focused, but it was also first person.
There really wasn't shooting though, but yeah, I hear you.
No, but what I'm saying is it's told from the first person perspective. I think there's some things that you can do really well from it. I don't think there's a lot of weight in that idea that first person is not as good for certain stuff. It's just, if you have a vision that works well from first person, then go for it,
I think that's why people were kind of poking fun at the Kotaku article. It's like, I don't think it's because of the genre. I think it's because Immortals of Avium was just not the greatest game.
It was just media. It was just bland. You know what bugged me so much about Immortals of Avium? And it sucks because they were trying to make a brand new IP, super risky, right? So I was like, give them some props for that, trying to make a brand new wizard world, right? That's pretty tough to do. Had good characters in there, good acting, so it was a little cheesy, a little TV drama-y, but it was good for a video game. I thought it was decent. But you've got, so you're a wizard. You've got these 3 magic powers that you can cycle between. I'm expecting to see some Doctor Strange level abilities where you could pull guys through time portals and do all this crazy stuff. But nope, all you get is like beam weapons and like pew pew laser weapons. I'm like, this is this is all you can do with it. You get
this is a shotty. Yeah. This is a sniper.
Yeah, you get the green magic, which is I suck at aiming, so it will auto track the bad guys for me.
Yeah.
Then you get the red magic, which is like AoE or something, and then like blue, which is like sniper magic, and it's just like that's the level of creativity. So you built this whole world with all this. You spent $150 million production on building out this giant game with great art assets. By the way, fantastic art assets, really good. Interesting ideas for the lore, and then they just throw the most bland gameplay ideas on top of them. Like, you didn't want to take any cool risks with it, any weird.
I mean, they did take risks, but gameplay wise, not so much.
Yeah, the gameplay was just like shoot stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Upgrade your shooty guns. Okay. That's it.
Yep.
Oh, but it's not. They're not guns, guys. It's magic. You're like, all right, whatever.
It's magic.
I feel bad because I think that studio shut down and nobody working there is at fault, but aside from the people who shut down I'm sure at some point there were some good ideas there and somebody's like, nah, I don't get this. I don't understand your complex magic combat. And then they're like, just make it like guns.
I mean, that's what they did.
Probably happened. That probably happened. You know, I went back to play. Sometimes you got to go back in time to play a good game. You know, you're waiting for these good titles to come out. But so many games come out every year. We can't play them all. Sometimes you just miss out completely on a game. And I found this game because I'm sort of researching space games for my own space game. I'm trying to fill in my knowledge gaps, right? I'm like, what space games did I miss out on? Found one that came out in 2016 called House of the Dying Sun. Have you heard about it?
Never. No.
Yeah. So it was marketed primarily as a VR title because I think they're kind of trying to push a bunch of VR games back then. It works fine without VR. Like, I think the VR adds to the experience, but it's totally passable
playable
as a non-VR game. But it's a little spaceship fighter game, and it's got great style. It's got this almost Dune-like kind of narrative backstory where you're like executing the. It's funny because it says like execute the. Shoot, I'm trying to think of like the betrayer or something, or it's all kind of this royal decree type way of explaining things, but you're in starfighters, you know, so you're sort of fighting for your house and fighting for power in this galaxy.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot.
I like it, but it doesn't go deep on the narrative. It's a very bite-sized game that's just like you can probably beat in a couple hours, and then switch to higher difficulties if you want to do that. But what was neat about it is not only is the art style great, it's very simplistic but really attractive, but it teaches you all the really complex space dogfighting skills that you could, say, find in Star Citizen, and teaches it to you in like 5 minutes. And you can do it on like an Xbox controller and have fun. I was like, this is what all these freaking space games are missing. Like, just a good onboarding experience.
Just a good tutorial.
Yeah. And not needing 10,000 keys to do some. So it does most of the stuff you can do in these other games, but just with like 10 different buttons instead of like 50, you know? Mm-hmm. It's always my gripe with these big space sim games where you have to memorize an entire keyboard of,
like, you're on a spaceship itself.
Yeah. And it's and you're just like, well, what if you just held that down and it gave you 5 options instead of having to memorize 5 keys, you know? And this game just does a great job of thinking about what's most important in a space combat, what's most fun. Let's put all that right there and not overcomplicate the rest of it. And they give you almost as much depth as like one of these more crazy space games out there.
Cool. When did it come out?
2016.
Oh, so it's been a while.
Yeah, but they picked a very stylized graphic style, so it holds up in that regard. You're not going to be like, oh, these graphics are terrible. It's like, well, they're stylized, so it's fine.
Yeah.
So they were smart about it that way. I think it was done just to make it perform well on VR.
Probably.
But yeah, I think it's kind of like a little gem. I was quite pleased with it.
Oh, nice. It's always fun when that happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I like doing that with movies a lot. Is like just going back and like, oh, that's a weird movie from the 70s is amazing. Have you ever seen A Boy and His Dog?
A Boy and His Dog? No.
I think that's the name of it. I want to make sure I get the title right since I'm getting so many.
A Boy and His Puppy.
His Dog. Yeah, that's it. 1975. We'll go watch that movie, Matt.
Okay.
A whole movie's based on a punchline. The whole thing builds up to a single punchline it's not really based on a punchline, but honestly, like the punchline is the best part of the film at the very end. It's fantastic.
Okay.
Post-apocalyptic. There's a guy, a boy, if you will, and his dog roaming the wasteland trying to survive. But the dog is the smarter of the two. And the dog, so it's like radioactive wasteland. The dog is a mutant, has telepathic abilities, and can communicate with the boy.
1975.
Yeah. So there's no CGI. It's that they literally just do a voiceover that the guy hears in his head.
Uh-huh.
And so he's like, his little shaggy dog's like talking to him.
Or is this guy's just insane? Or do you just like, if it's post-apocalyptic with all the radiation, maybe he's just thinking.
It's possible. I didn't actually think about that, but that could be a different depth to the story there.
The dog's just wandering around like, what is my my friend doing here?
Well, it's funny because it's a movie where you're the main character. You don't particularly like him because he's not a good person and he's kind of stupid. And the dog is sort of the one calling the shots and like, telling him what to do and like, hey, don't stay away from those guys over there and whatever. I desperately want them to remake this movie. I think it would be fantastic, but it's kind of unwatchable nowadays because of how old it is.
Yeah.
And then I was watching, like maybe a while back. You remember that show Adventure Time?
Yeah, I never really watched it though.
Yeah, you're an adult. I wouldn't expect you to. I don't know why I got on it.
I know it's pretty popular for even adults too, but I think it was aimed more towards a younger audience.
I got on a kick for a while where I was watching it. Mm-hmm. This was before I had kids. I was just like, this show's great. I don't know why I like it so much. And it occurred to me that the whole premise of the show is like almost identical to A Boy and His Dog. And I was like, is this inspired directly from A Boy and His Dog? Because he's got a dog with kind of magical powers, and the dog is generally a lot smarter than the main character in the show. And I was like, this is pretty much the same premise.
Yeah, but in cartoon form.
Let us know in the comments if you've seen A Boy and His Dog. I'd be very surprised to find other people that have seen this ancient film. But solid one. Good one for a remake. I'm normally not a huge fan of remakes because they always screw them up, but that'd be one I'd be down for.
But that one would be interesting?
Yeah.
I played some more games this week.
Yeah.
One of
games.
them.
Okay.
Yeah, games. I mean, we can keep talking about movies and shows if you want.
No, I'm just kidding.
But I played Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, which is...
Is that the top-down one?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes. So I'm assuming you know what Deep Rock Galactic is, Rock and Stone.
Yeah.
And it's set in the same universe, and you fight a lot of the same bugs and things like that. But it is... I don't know. Apparently, the Survivor is now just a genre because it's inspired by Vampire Survivor, the top-down game where you go around and you take out the enemies. You kind of gather them around, take them out.
That's
and
a roguelike,
you get XP,
though, right?
Yeah, and this exactly what this is too.
And this is roguelike. So it's just kind of. So this become a new genre now. The top-down roguelike.
Yeah, so
interesting.
It looks a lot better than, at least visually, graphically, it looks much better than Vampire Survivor, but that's because that's going for a certain aesthetic. But it looks great, and it's you get weapons and you find more around as you level up, and then things get pretty wild.
Yeah.
My one critique early on was I felt like it was very difficult to kind of get going, and they kind of make you grind. So when you unlock a new weapon, you have to overcharge it, which means that you have to go into a mission, find the weapon or unlock the weapon, and then get it to level 12. And you do that by just upgrading it as you go along when you get leveled up, right?
Yeah.
Once you get to level 12, that means the next time you find it on another mission, each like 5 levels, 6 levels or something like that, you can give it a perk, which will really benefit it. And the end perks are like nuts. So you can get like you have like these dual pistol things that will, like, once you get it fully unlocked, it will start to like shoot all around you. So you basically become a tornado of death. Right. And it's really fun when you finally get it to that point where you're like, yes, it took a long time. You know, I not only had to grind it all out, but then I had to get lucky with the upgrades that I got. And now I finally got it. And now I'm just a whirlwind. And it's really satisfying. There's just something about that is just really addicting. And they've got 4 different classes right now. I don't know how many classes there were in the base game. I think it was also 4, but I could be wrong. There may be even more. I played it like 3 years ago. So forgive me, Deep Rock Galactic fans out there. I haven't had a lot of experience with it. But yeah, lot of variety in the weapons. So far, the levels, there's only 3. And the only the change that really happens is that they get harder the harder difficulty you go up. So you're fighting harder enemies that just take longer to take down. So you really need to optimize your builds and things like that. But it's just a really fun, pretty well made survivor. I guess that's the genre now. I don't know what to call it anymore, but yeah.
But it is a roguelike. It's like a subgenre of roguelike, survivor subgenre.
There is a meta progression in between. You find these resources around that you can then use those resources to give you better luck, which luck will increase the chances that you get a higher rarity on your upgrades. You have, some that will, so you'll do more damage. Your characters will slowly start to get better from round to round because of these passive bonuses that you're unlocking. And that's like the meta progression. But yeah, it is essentially you go in and you just have to start from scratch each time. Just like a roguelike.
It's interesting. So, but you do get kind of permanent upgrades, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It is fun and it is addicting, and there is sort of that satisfaction and also slight annoyance as you get further along where you're like, oh, this game was way harder when I first started because I didn't have any of it. So it's a weird combination because you would think you would want the game to be easier at the start and then harder toward the end. But that's actually...
It does start to get harder. Like, yeah, it does. On those harder difficulties, like they'll start to dunk on you. But then you have... It's harder because... they have more HP and they hit harder, but because now you're better at the game, it's not as hard, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, that's a hard thing to do, but roguelikes seem to sort of nail it down real well.
But that is a critique I have, is that the early on, at least for me, I found like it was a bit of a slog because like I got a new weapon. It's like, oh boy, okay, now I have to level it all up to 12. And if I don't get it to 12, that means I don't get the overlock charge unlocked, which means the next time I find it, I have to do it all over again. And if my character gets taken out during that run, it's like, oh, well, I got to do it again, which got really annoying.
That is a little bit, I like the roguelikes where you can get permanent upgrades to your character that make them better, but I don't like some of the abilities and weapons being tied into that system as much, right? Where if you're a good player, your first playthrough, you should be able to get some of the really cool crap if you know how to combine the things together, as opposed to needing to grind out.
It's an artificial padding to make you play more, which I agree. I don't like it. When I was younger, I didn't mind. Like, I remember people critiquing Battlefield 3. I still remember this to this day. It's like, why do I have to grind all these weapons? And my thought to those people that were complaining about it is like, well, just do it. Like, that's the game. But now that I'm older, I'm like, I get it. I don't want to just arbitrarily have to, I've got the weapon. Just let me experience the fun of the weapon. Don't make me go through this needless grind to get it to 12. And then the next time I get the weapon, I can now actually experience it at its full potential. That does kind of rub me the wrong way. It's not a deal breaker because it's not that bad once you kind of start to get into the groove of things and you understand. But it is a grind for the sake of literally just being a grind.
Yeah. And I find now that I'm getting older too and have different sort of time increments that I play games, I just don't play games for the same length that I used to. Probably not the same for you since you're streaming them, so you can sink some hours in, but the long grind didn't bother me as much when I was like, yeah, this is my one game that I play, and I play this all the time, and sometimes I'll play something else, but usually this one game. So having long grinds had extra value and meaning to me, and it was like, yeah, I got all the good stuff, and other people didn't all have it because they couldn't play as much as me. But I was playing this one game all the time. But now that I'm older and I'm like, oh crap, like, wait, how many hours do I need to get
Call
that
of Duty is the worst with that.
Yeah. It's
now.
like 30 hours. I'll just be like, yeah, screw it. I'll play something else. I'm not going to sink 30 hours just trying to get this one thing. So
yeah,
it's interesting, like, depending on where you are in life, how much you like to sink your time into one game versus casually play. The grind has different meaning, right? You're like, oh, I like grind in sort of the sense of accomplishment, where other people are like, just give me good gameplay and let me experience it all in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah. And I don't mind there being a progression. I think progression is fun. Just look at Helldivers. Like you start off with only a couple of cool explosions and stratagems, but then by the end you're calling in like orbital lasers and it's awesome. But you are experiencing the cool stuff. Like it's still cool later on, the whole time, right? Yeah. You don't feel like, oh, this laser is, not as good because I now need to, put 10 hours into making this one laser really, really strong, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's good out of the box.
Maybe that's sort of an angle of how the grind is designed around every tier of gameplay, right? So if the game ever feels like a grind, then maybe that tier of the gameplay just isn't as well designed. Where you're like, oh yeah, I'm not enjoying the gameplay as much right now because all I'm thinking about is getting to the next tier. So I can see what that's like, as opposed to just enjoying the tier I'm on and then being sort of surprised by getting to the next stage and be like, oh, let's see what this is like, as opposed to, this sucks. I bet it'll be better when I get the next upgrade or something, Yeah. Yeah.
So that is probably my biggest complaint, and it's a small one in the grand scheme of things because it's really fun. It's only $9 too right now. I think it's like $9.
Nice.
It's cheap. If you like that survivor style, vampire survivor, Death Must Die is a good one. If you like those kind of games, I'd recommend giving it a try.
How do they make those games so cheaply, man? It is really inexpensive. Yeah.
Oh, it also has some really cool mechanics where you dig. So they take that same.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask about it. I'm like, yeah, well, why take this genre and turn it into a survivors game?
Yeah, there'll be like rocks around and big rock structures, and you can dig through it, and you can actually use that to your advantage where they'll wrap around, and then so if you go like through, you can kind of like get to the other side and not get surrounded, or you can use it to like make a funnel where if you have like particular weapons that were like are only focused on like one side, you can kind of like funnel them in and take out a lot and then weave your way around. So it adds a little bit of a dynamic and decision making, because really those games are just movement. You literally just move your character around. You don't have to attack, you don't have to dodge, it's just movement. So having that little extra decision making, I think, kind of adds to the enjoyment.
Yeah, that's cool. I'll check it. I probably won't check that one out, but I do appreciate those types of games. Yeah. I wish I was exploring a little more gaming wise these days, but I'm just like waiting on cool stuff to happen with Star Citizen,
you got
dude.
Kids, I know.
Well, there's only a couple games that really, really pique my interest these days, and every now and then some weird little oddity will come up and I'll be like, I have to try this. That looks neat. But yeah, I'm just sort of like, Star Citizen when? Star Citizen when?
You just yep.
Addicted, Matt. I'm addicted.
You are.
Yeah. Well, you watch any good shows? Read any books?
Well, almost done with Iron Gold, which is the fourth book of Red Rising. Probably shouldn't talk about that because that's just spoilers.
Oh yeah.
But really, really loving it. Absolutely love Red Rising. It's one of my favorite series, and the fourth book is just great. So loving that. Masters of the Air. I've been watching Solo Leveling, which is an anime, which it's a shonen, so it's just action, which has been fun, I guess. But other than that, no, I haven't really been watching a lot of stuff. I've just been playing games.
Are you gonna read Dune eventually?
I will eventually read Dune, yeah. Especially with the second movie coming out. I don't know when I'm gonna get around to it, but that is on my list of books.
Cool. Cool, man. Well, what you playing tonight?
Helldivers.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if it lets me in. I tried to play it 2 days ago and it didn't work.
That's gonna be so frustrating on stream when you're like Helldivers,
yeah, I had Helldivers. Like I was in the queue, which wasn't a queue. It was like retrying to get up every 30 seconds, and I just played Deep Rock Galactic Survivor for like 5 hours, and then I just gave up. It was bad.
God, dude.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice that you can at least play another game while it's queuing, you know. And you're like, oh, hey, we got in, guys.
And I had a ton of fun, so it's not like it was a bad stream. It was a great stream. I really enjoyed my time, but it was unfortunate that they are struggling with their servers so much. I'm sure if I was constantly Alt F4ing and then retrying and not just waiting for the 30 seconds, I probably would have gotten in faster. But yeah, so hopefully I can play that tonight. That's
a good way to artificially inflate your retention for player metrics, right? You're like, well, the first batch can't play for a whole week, so they'll be playing a lot longer. I would wonder if that Helldivers retention curve would look more normal if the servers were all on, because it's going up, you know, and you're like, that's odd. It just
never stops. Yeah,
that's weird that they just keep growing in interest.
Why are there so many people just on right now?
Yeah.
They're all in those waiting the main menu.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean that's good if you can make a game that good that it's killing the servers, man. I'm happy for them, and they do sound like good devs that kind of have the core values at heart. Yeah. Maybe we'll get more of them, man. So, you want to wrap things up there?
I'd love to.
You got some solid advice for our viewers who have tuned in and waited to the last moment here for Matimio's life advice that's going to get him through the next week.
Life advice. My life advice this week, I gave it some thought, is and it's real basic. This applies to our younger viewers, high school, college, younger. It applies to really anyone. But if an opportunity arises, go for it. When you look back on your life, not that I'm an old ancient man, but you're probably going to regret the things that you didn't do, not that you did, unless it's like illegal. Don't do illegal things, kids. But yeah, if a friend invites you to go out with them. Go. You want to go do an activity, go for it. Do it.
Yeah.
Don't be like me, who just ignored everything and was like, I'm going to play video games all the time and not make any friends in school.
That is good advice. That's good advice. I see sometimes on social media, they kind of promote the whole reclusive, it feels even better than going out, staying in and doing nothing.
Oh, yeah. And there's
sure.
That's fine. Do that, but don't
canceling plans can feel good, but usually when it's a plan you don't want to do in the first place. But put yourself out of your comfort zone there. That's actually deeply rooted into apparently intelligence metrics, which is the more experiences you subject yourself to, the better you retain and can relate to information and questions and stuff like that.
God, I must be stupid then.
It's I read an article on the SATs which was like, it's not a measurement of like the school system per se, as much as it is the community and family life around that person.
Really?
Yeah, because so much of the SAT is based around like reading comprehension now, and reading comprehension is based very much around being able to relate to something. So if a reading comprehension story is around, say, baseball, and you've never watched a baseball game or been to a baseball game or played baseball,
you have no context of what's happening in the story.
Your comprehension is going to be trash. So apparently just getting out there and doing more things and having more experiences like that actually improves your...
It does make sense.
Yeah. Makes sense, right? Yeah. Cool stuff. Good advice, Matt.
Thank you.
You're welcome, people. Again, if you want to follow us or support us on Patreon, check out the link in the description. If you want to join the Discord channel and give us some topic suggestions you'd like us to talk about, check us out there. Comment. Let us know what you think of Matimio's advice, and we'll be back here next week to entertain you with our interesting adult stories of gamerdom and I don't know.
Man, we're really selling this podcast.
Yeah, whew, we're wild people, man. I've got kids, and Matt streams for like 10 hours every night. Woo, we're crazy. We're crazy. All right, people. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out.
Take care.